each of our buildings are at in their implementation. Where to next for Valley View?
It's a great question. It's interesting. I posed that question and thought it was easy. And as I sit here and say I'm the one who might be in a position that I should be able to make recommendations, I think it's two things. And I think if I go back to Dr. Wood's comments and even Sarah late in the day, several times I heard people say, are we ready for feedback? Are we ready for formative assessment? And just like in a classroom, it's not going to be everybody. In some buildings where success criteria has been embedded, there's going to be some adults that they still need work there. They still need practice there. We can't hold back adult learners that are ready to move on to feedback, that are ready to move on to their second or third impact cycle. So I think it's taking an honest pulse and being able to determine where do we need to differentiate professional development, allow teachers some input in terms of how they are being developed and what they're learning on, and which goes back to making sure we have success criteria. When we were finishing up the day at Woodview yesterday, and one of the teachers, Dawn, described how teachers rate themselves on where they're at on the continuum so they can say, I'm still needing some of this. John Hattie's evidence on learning is prolific and profound, and you can't argue with it, and it's not based on whether or not you're 5 or 15 or 50. It applies to everybody. So I think making sure that you're allowing those critical pieces, success criteria, developing visible learners, that continues. And in a large district like Valley View, you're going to have turnover every year. So how do you plan for that new wave of teachers coming in that doesn't get trained through 2 days of visible learning every single time, but how do we make sure we're embedding those key practices in some of our early professional learning for new teachers? But just like we have a summer gap with students, we're going to have adults that need a refresher, going to need to be reminded of that. While that's happening, we have learners at the adult level that are ready to move on, that are ready to embrace quality, common formative assessment writing, that are ready to embrace deeper examples of how they can be a more effective PLC, how they could utilize data more effectively. So I think it's stepping back and saying it might be the same quantity of support, it might be the same quantity of outside workshops, seminars, embedded professional development, but it's got to be able to look different for the adult learners and continuing to utilize teacher voice, making sure teachers feel like they aren't having professional development done to them. They have some input as to how and why they're learning. So long-winded answer to a very short question. I think it's a balance of making sure we don't allow teachers who still need some support to get what they need and to not hold anybody back.